While there is no real right or wrong answer whether VA technology or IPS technology is the superior one, I always preferred a good, fast IPS panel over the VA or TN alternatives because IPS panels always offered generally better image quality, and even though they were considered slower before, nowadays IPS panels are quite fast. I mean, you have 280 Hz IPS panels on the market with even faster panels on the way. So even in that fast-paced gaming, IPS panels have become really competitive. Now, it is true that the VA panel will cost you a bit less, but I personally never minded paying a bit more to get a panel that offers a great and crisp image quality. So when MSI sent this monitor out to us to check it out, I was not that excited because I thought it was just another monitor in line. This is their new Optix MAG272CQR. It is a $400 27-inch monitor with Quad HD resolution. It has VA technology and 165 Hz refresh rate. Now, I do have to say 27-inch and Quad HD is a great balance for gamers and all-around users, and 165 Hz is a nice refresh rate. But none of these specs are super out of the ordinary and something we haven't seen before. So yeah, I wasn't that crazy excited. But the panel technology and all these specs don't really tell the whole story, because at the end of the day, it's your experience with the monitor as well as how the monitor performs what matters. So when I started testing it and playing some games on it, I was actually quite impressed. I mean, this monitor changed my opinion about VA panels. So let's see what this monitor offers. Let's see if it's worth getting for you guys. And yeah, right off the bat, a little spoiler, I really like it. Let's go. This video is brought to you by Cooler Master and their MM711 Ultra Light Gaming Mouse. With the top optical sensor, solid Omron switches, beautiful RGB and a weight of only 60 grams, the MM711 is a great mouse for serious gamers and all-around users alike. Check it out using the links in the description below. From a physical perspective, MSI has done a good job with this monitor. I really like the sleek design with its solid, minimalistic metal stand. The physical bezels are super slim, although as we often see, the actual display doesn't really begin till much further from the edge. It has a nice 1500R curve, a bit stronger than the 1800R that is typical, but you don't really need a curve on a 27-inch monitor. It is height adjustable and the display can be tilted up and down as well. You can't rotate it or swivel it sideways. Now, curved displays really don't need to be rotated, but a bit of swivel would have been nice. On the back there is a bit more bling with some glossy elements, an MSI logo and some RGB that can be controlled via the software. The brushed-looking parts on the back are actually plastic, but I would say they look pretty good, and the whole display actually feels very sturdy. It also has plenty of connection. There is one DisplayPort 1.2, two HDMI 2.0 ports, a USB hub, there is a headphone jack and a Kensington lock option if you like to take your monitor to LAN parties. We also find the typical joystick in the back that is used to control the OSD. The OSD itself is pretty straightforward and very easy to get used to. A very nice extra is the option to control the OSD using the software and your mouse and keyboard, which I personally love. It is a small change we've seen more often recently, but I really think it does make changing your settings or making profiles per game a lot easier. It also lets you easily add crosshairs or other typical gaming stuff we see on most gaming monitors these days. So let's talk about the image quality, and this is where I think this MSI panel really shines. Even though it's using the latest VA panel from Samsung, it actually feels like a very good IPS panel. It is crisp, it is sharp, it is extremely consistent and uniform across the whole panel, and that is what VA panels usually struggle with. So while just using it and looking at it, I would say it's an excellent panel. You can use it not just for gaming, but also for video editing and photo editing or any kind of everyday use. If we look at the measurements, most of them don't really stand out, although none of them are actually bad. Maximum brightness comes in at an acceptable but far from exciting 321 nits, and the minimum white levels are 44 nits, which is again fine but not particularly special. Contrast is good at over 2800 to 1, again not exceptional for VA panels, but a lot better than TN or IPS alternatives. The factory calibration is decent overall. It has more than a full sRGB coverage, pretty good color accuracy and gray balance, as well as white balance. Now, again, nothing really stands out here, but everything is sort of good. Considering my subjective impressions really put this monitor among the top VA panels, this shows that there is more to a good quality panel than just these core results. One thing where this panel truly shines is the uniformity, something that is subjectively noticeable, but also objectively very easy to measure. The average uniformity results are truly excellent, and even the worst peak result is considerably better than most panels I've seen so far. The only monitors that showed better uniformity were the Asus PG27UQ and ProArt PA32UCX, and both of these are high-end monitors costing thousands of dollars rather than hundreds. Now, keep in mind, uniformity, like most results, can vary from sample to sample, but this is an exceptional result. Of course, that would not be possible if this monitor had a lot of backlight bleed going on, and thankfully there is basically none of that. The viewing angles are excellent, and that is another element that somehow makes this monitor feel more like an IPS display. As for gaming, MSI is claiming this is a 1 millisecond MPRT display. MPRT means moving picture response time, and in theory it's supposed to be a better way of measuring response time. Now, this is usually more marketing than realism unless you're really completely insensitive to overshoot. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a proper fast panel and it's competitive in its 144 to 165 Hz class. It offers a very similar speed experience to the Gigabyte Aorus CV27Q, for example, or even a better experience than the older panels like Samsung LC27HG70. But in really fast-moving objects, you can actually see a difference between this panel and a very fast 280 Hz VG27IQM from Asus, for example, which is actually an IPS monitor. So if all you do is play competitive esports titles, just look at those extra fast TN or IPS options instead. However, as this is a 27-inch Quad HD 165 Hz option, I would say it was made more for a all-around gaming experience, and that's what this monitor does really well. Especially because even though this is just a FreeSync monitor on paper, while testing it with an NVIDIA GPU, it worked perfectly well with the G-Sync enabled. Now, I don't know if MSI didn't want to pay or bother with NVIDIA to get a proper G-Sync certificate, or maybe there's some other compatibility issues in games I haven't played, but with all the games I've played so far, there was zero issues, so that's actually great news. Now, there is one part of the gaming experience that I do have to warn you about, and that is the HDR. MSI calls this display HDR ready, which means it takes the HDR signal, but it doesn't even meet the minimum requirements for HDR 400. Peak brightness in HDR mode goes from 321 nits to 371 nits, but that is still far from what you want to see. For some monitors, I would say turning HDR on is worth it, because often you get more brightness out of it, but here, I honestly don't see any point in it. So that about covers it for the MSI Optix MAG272CQR monitor, and even though in many ways it doesn't really stand out, everything it does reasonably well. Well, except for HDR, but HDR at this price range is just a myth anyways. It is not the fastest monitor out there, but it's very fast and smooth for a VA panel, and at 27-inch with a Quad HD resolution, it's perfect for gamers and for all-around users alike. It syncs really well with AMD cards, and at least so far in our testing, it's synced great with NVIDIA graphics cards as well. Most importantly, I was really impressed with its image quality and great uniformity, and personally I would consider using this panel if I was in a market for a new monitor, especially because $400 is not cheap, but it's still cheaper than the IPS alternatives. That being said, it is still a very tough price range because you have so many options out there that do their job really well as well, and depending on your needs. But if this is the monitor you really like and you find it at a very competitive price, it is definitely a very solid option to consider. Now, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this monitor and about this review. Don't forget to subscribe, give me thumbs up, and see you in the next one. Bye!